Hey everyone, Reynolds here, and this is part 2 of a resume series video that I am shooting. Now, the first one that I did, which you can find a link to right below, I focused on formatting of resumes. So if you haven't seen that, check it out. But this one's going to be focused on experiences that I got out of each of my corporate jobs, focusing on two things. The good things that stood out for each job, which made me want to take it, and then the challenges that I experienced, lessons learned. I put it as, it's a nice way to say it, right? No, but most of my experiences have been actually really good, and that's just a result of knowing how to choose the right job for you. So I wanted to share that with you because it's super important. If you're new to the channel, welcome. Appreciate it if you subscribe. This is the channel where I blur the line between entertainment and technology. Entertainment projects that I do and the technology that I've had experience with and could teach you about. So let's jump in. All right, everyone. So here's my resume, but we are going to jump towards the bottom and work our way towards the top. Now, the first job that I had out of college, I actually don't have written down here. I was only there a few months, but it was an advertising agency, and it was a sweatshop. Now, the good thing is that I saw some of the best presenters in the world there. They were like the greatest. They were like, it was like from Mad Men, as if everybody was Don from Mad Men that gave like the most captivating presentations. But it was a sweatshop, and I remember getting a nosebleed from working like 70 plus hours. Some people worked over 100 hours a week. It wasn't for me, and I ended up moving into technology inspired by my friend and decided to enroll in a master's program at DePaul University. And to pay for that master's program, I had gotten a job at the help desk at that university as a client support specialist. And that's what this is here. Now, the good thing that I learned from this job was how much fun a job can be. Fun and challenging. Completely opposite from the advertising job that I had as a media buyer at the advertising agency. The lesson that I learned here was that education should not be so expensive. Now, maybe it's because I got some grants and a good package from Northwestern, but at DePaul University, they really didn't give me any money. It was all loans, and I did not want to go into debt. So I ended up getting out of that program because I knew the skills that I was going to learn on the job was going to be good enough, and I was right. The other lesson that I learned from this job was that being friendly helps. I knew my boss and was really cool with him. I liked him a lot, but there was another colleague that was friendlier with him, and when it came time to apply for a full-time position there, he got it, and I'm pretty sure that was the reason. He was good at his job too, but he had the edge there. The third lesson that I learned from this job is that not to let being passed over hold you back from making moves that you need to. Because not only did that happen, but I do remember that there was someone from the outside that was hired as a contractor. I had never heard of that term before. But when I learned about how contractors get paid, and they came in as a full-time also, I was like, I should try to be one of these contractors, because this guy was coming and asking me to help fix a lot of stuff and that he couldn't figure out on his own, and he was getting paid like 3-4 times what I was. So I tried to be a contractor and put my resume out there, and it worked like a charm. Within days, recruiters were like totally all over me. So I was glad of how the events turned out for me to make the next move. And then somebody contacted me about a job at Anderson Consulting, and that's where my friend was, where I was really impressed with his job. So I applied for there as a help desk technician there and got it. And it was awesome. My boss was awesome over there. So that was one of the great things at that job there. The other good thing was that she did her job so well that many computers did not have issues. So it wasn't too challenging as a help desk person there, but I moved into doing programming because I learned about that. So I really loved that company. It was awesome. The lesson learned was that one, lack of challenge can become boring, which is why I got into programming and left the help desk there. The second lesson that I learned there is that there are going to be employees that do not like you, that want to take you down. Hasn't happened often to me. Only really one person really stood out, and that was on a project here at this company. And really, they weren't out to try to, they weren't like making an effort, but they definitely did not want to help. So if I had questions, they didn't want to answer, and just made it as difficult as possible. So that was new to me. I wasn't used to that. And what was sophisticated about her approach was that she only behaved like that when it was just me and her. So when there was other people around, she put on like another front, you know. So I became more prepared, and later on in life just realized you cannot depend on people that are there to train you, get you up to speed for them to do that job. You have to assume that you're going to be solo, as if you're building your own company. That was the next big lesson that I learned. And the last lesson was that even though you might like the position that you're in, sometimes you still have to make moves. And this time it was in direct correlation to travel schedule. I didn't want to travel. The position that I had originally applied there did not require me to. A lot of work that I did there did not require me to, but eventually the only work that was available was work that required travel. So that was why I left. But I left on good terms with some great memories. The next company that I started working for was Inforte, and that was a good experience in the sense that I was really inspired by the people that started that company. They were guys that actually worked at the former company I was at, and they went off to spin off their own new consulting agency, and their business model was pretty much the same. So it wasn't a huge change in culture. The lesson that I learned from there was that you need to save money, whether you're an individual or a company, because this was during the time that the economy went really bad, during the dot-com bomb, and lots of layoffs all over the country in respect to technology. And this company hung around there for a while because they had saved up a lot of money, but eventually that ran out and there were layoffs, and one by one, little by little, department by department, everybody got hit. And pretty soon after I left, about maybe 6 months later or so, I found out the company shut down. Now, the next company that I worked for was one called Rise Time Consulting. And the good thing about working here was that it was the first time I was working in a really small team and building applications, systems from scratch, from beginning to end. So I was there for the design phase up until we deployed it. And the guys that I worked with were close. It was just me and two other guys, and we stayed in touch for a while, even after I ended up leaving that company. The lesson that I learned from that company is that when you are working a lot of hours, it's usually due to bad management. Now, I never really thought about that, even when I was at the advertising agency. But what ended up happening was the manager that was there got fired. One day we came into work, he didn't show up, and then the CEO was there, and he came in and talked to us, and he said, hey, you guys have been missing a lot of deadlines and working a lot of hours, so I know it's not your fault, because you guys have been putting the work in. Whenever a situation like that comes up, it's because of management. And what he did is he put our team lead as the manager, and then things changed. We weren't missing deadlines anymore, and we weren't working crazy hours. Big lesson learned. So keep that in mind, because if management is bad and no one's making any changes about it, it's time to make some moves. Now, when I had gotten this job, it was during a recession, so I actually took a big pay cut. So when another opportunity came up to go back to where I felt like I should have been getting paid, I took it. And actually that was back with Anderson Consulting, now called Accenture. Remember, I said I had left on good terms. Always try to leave on the best terms that you can, because sometimes second relationships happen. And I loved going back, and it was great again while I was there. And the role that they got me in was not traveling because that was the only reason I had left. But the lesson that I want to pull out of this experience was that it is possible some companies can be loyal to you, but you just can't assume it. While I was in California, the next technical job that I got was with the Tribune Company. That was a company that owned the LA Times. Again, this was another company that was great with their work environment. Particularly at this one, it was really fun going to work because I really bonded with my colleagues. We would work out. They had a gym there, and it was fun. Going to work did not feel like work, and that's really how it should be. The lesson that I learned was that when you go to a really good company, you don't want to get too comfortable and keep out of touch with the real world, because that's what I ended up doing. I was so much in a comfort zone there and was so focused on just being good at my job for what they needed, I didn't pay attention to the skill sets that were evolving outside of the company. So when it was time to move on, I had to play catch up. So lesson number one there was to keep your skills sharp. The second lesson is that some companies will not be loyal to you. I remember coming up with a business idea that would work well for one of their departments, and I brought up to management, wrote a business proposal, and it started going up because people really liked it, but yet it all boiled down to just like one individual that really didn't care for it. And even though he had me and some other person that I brought on to push this business idea forward, crank out a lot of work, just one day he just had somebody else say, yeah, we're not doing it, and that was it. Never even cared to address it to us or to talk to us face to face. And so what I learned is that that was like a lack of loyalty. Not that they had to do it, but we could have had a conversation about it. It just felt a little rude, given how much energy I was putting into it, and my other guy. And the other guy was a person that actually created a company and sold it to Tribune. So it wasn't like I'm a small-time punk developer that was, coming up with just like some crazy idea. This was like something very credible. So it just was really odd to just see it just be ignored like that. But that happens. So live and learn. Some companies won't be loyal to you. So that's okay. Save that energy for your own entities. Not to say that you shouldn't come up with ideas for them, but for the really big ones, if you're not willing to accept that it might not work out, then you should do whatever endeavor you want for yourself. The third lesson that I learned was that winter can always come. The economy turned bad again, and we had like a lot of layoffs. This time it was like over close to 200 people. And we had a small team, like a team of 3 to 4 developers. And we still got hit, and I had gotten laid off, and I didn't think that was going to happen. So lesson number 3 there, winter can always come and hit you. So 3 lessons from that one. Keep your skills sharp, know that loyalty is not a given, and winter can always come. The next job that I worked at was Prestige Artists. This one was a company that I started up on my own. And this was like a great endeavor, and this is something I recommend to anyone. Whenever you're in between jobs, don't let a lot of time go by where you're just only searching for work. Take the opportunity to create your own company, come up with an idea, do something, so that this way it doesn't look like you're not doing anything, because that makes it harder for the next time you need to get a job. So it was great learning a lot of skill sets that I was able to apply to my own company. And then the lesson learned was how valuable it was. It made it easier to get another job because it didn't seem like I was unemployed for a long time. And the idea with my company was really booking artists for corporate engagement. And all those skill sets that I have there was stuff that I was able to try to implement on my own website. Now, eventually I moved on to another full-time job, and that was for this credit union. The good thing here was that I learned how great a company can be at making a really good culture. They really went above and beyond to try to make sure people were happy, had a work-life balance. No one there was ever working overtime. Well, I mean, not that I know of, but it certainly didn't seem like that. So that was great. And the lesson that I learned there, though, there will be brown nosers. There was one person that I saw that did such intense brown nosing. It was so embarrassing. It hurt my stomach just watching it. And I couldn't believe that nobody else was saying anything about it. And the sad thing was that it was working. And the boss loved it. And that was like really annoying to see. But I learned that I can't like let that get to me. It's gonna happen, it's gonna happen. You just don't need to do it. There's a respectful way to be friendly with colleagues, be social, but not have to scoot down to brown nosing. It's so bad. You guys just should have been there. You would know it. You would know what I'm talking about. Oh man. The next lesson that I learned there is that it's not good to be around legacy technology that you don't learn from. And that was a situation there. So what you do, though, is keep your skills sharp. And that's related to the lesson that I learned at Tribune. Remember when I said that I was in a bubble because I enjoyed the job so much, I didn't keep my skills sharp? Well, by the time I was at this job, I didn't let that happen. So I was willing to accept this position, even though they had legacy equipment, but I kept my skills sharp, learning new technology, and actually got into teaching on the side. And this brings us to the present, where I'm now an independent contractor writing courses for various companies. And the first that I started doing that for was lynda.com LinkedIn Learning. And what was great is that I realized how awesome it is to have a bunch of students, an audience in public that really enjoys and appreciates your work. Simply said, just publishing content is awesome. The lesson that I learned was that no matter how much good work you do, when you're working with different people that you're producing content for, you always want to make sure that what they got was what they were expecting, and to ask. Don't make assumptions just because they didn't complain. Sometimes they say no news is good news. That's not always the case in corporate America. So just because you might have made a bunch of former managers really happy with the style of work, every time you get a new one, just make sure to ask.
So that's it. I really hope you took note of the really good things that I mentioned for each of the jobs that I had, in addition to the lessons learned. The good things are the things you're going to be wanting to look out for, and then the lessons learned are stuff that you're going to want to know how to deal with well. And it takes practice, and it takes years sometimes. So let me know if there's been some lessons that you learned recently that you want to jot down in the comments. And also, if you want me to put a PDF list together of all these things that I talked about, mention that in the comments too, and I'll do that. So until then, I'll see you in the next video.